Curly Hair Tarantula is a very popular and common New World terrestrial species. They used to be referred to as Brachypelma albopilosum, but were reclassified as Tliltocatl albopilosus. This species can be found in Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. Their care is very basic and straightforward. They do well at room temperatures between 68 and 74 degrees, but can be kept slightly warmer, especially during the summer. It is best to keep the substrate slightly damp in the spiderling enclosures, but as they get larger, you can keep them on dry substrate and just overflow the water dish occasionally to keep one corner of the enclosure slightly damp. Always avoid making the substrate swampy, as that can lead to issues with mold, fungus, flies, mites, and other issues that can make your tarantula unhealthy. Spiderlings can be fed flightless fruit flies or pinhead crickets, as well as pre-killed nymph roaches or pre-killed small crickets. Avoid feeding them any prey larger than 3/4 the size of the tarantula. Make sure to remove any uneaten prey 24 hours later, and never leave uneaten pieces of prey in the enclosure to help prevent mold and mites. Juveniles can be fed 3 or 4 small or medium crickets once every week or 2, depending on the size of their abdomen. Don't use any prey larger than 2/3 the size of the tarantula, and if you have to feed something larger, smash the prey's head before dropping it into the enclosure. This species can go weeks without eating, so check up on them 24 hours after feeding and remove any prey they have not eaten and try again in a week or 2. Wait 5 to 7 days after a molt before feeding a juvenile again. Adults will eat 4 or 5 large crickets or 1 large dubia roach every 3 to 4 weeks, but should be fed based on the abdomen size. If the abdomen is wider than the carapace, they are well fed, and you can skip feeding them until their abdomen is the same size or smaller than the carapace. Always remove any uneaten prey or boluses, and wait 10 to 14 days after a molt before attempting to feed them again. This tarantula will eat crickets, mealworms, and feeder roaches, so the amount you feed them will be dependent on the size and type of prey that you are providing. The smallest spiderlings can be kept in the sling crib until they reach about 3/4 of an inch in size. The cuboid mini, slider crib mini, and 3-inch cube enclosures are also great fits for this species. Fill the enclosure up halfway with substrate. Provide a small water dish or drip water on one corner of the substrate and the side of the enclosure every few days so they can drink when needed. Some good enclosure options for juvenile curly hairs are the 6-inch cube, small cuboid, and small slider cribs. Again, fill their enclosure up a little over halfway with substrate and provide a hide and water dish no wider than the tarantula's leg span. For adults, you want to use enclosures no smaller than 3 times the leg span of the tarantula. So the large slider crib, 12-inch cube, large cuboid, and even the terrestrial XL cribs are great options for adults. While the 8-inch cube, medium slider, and medium cuboid will work well for subadults. You set these enclosures up the same way as the smaller ones. Fill the enclosure up at least halfway with substrate. Provide a hide and water dish, and any decorations, as long as they are not too heavy or sharp. This is a very hardy species, and they are easy to care for. They make great pets and are interesting to observe. Being a New World species, their venom is not considered medically significant. But they do possess urticating hairs, so caution should always be used when rehousing or handling this species, as their hairs can be irritating, especially if they get in your nose, eyes, or mouth. The curly hair is a great beginner tarantula, but also a must-have species for seasoned keepers. Your curly hair deserves the best, so check out the full line of high-end acrylic enclosures for tarantulas and other invertebrates at tarantulacribs.com.